meeting of the 2016 presidential electors is now convened. The Secretary of State, the Honorable Jesse White, proclaims this day, the 19th day of December of the year 2016, as a day fixed for convening the electors of this state to cast votes for President and Vice President of the United States.
At this point, how many possible what they call faithless electors are there who might jump ship?
Look, we expect everything to fall in line. We're very confident that everything is going to be very smooth tomorrow.
And everything did fall in line. There really wasn't any doubt that it would, but Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. The electors have voted. Texas put him over the top, the 270 needed. There were only a couple of instances where faithless electors voted otherwise. This is the statement from the president-elect. Today marks a historic electoral landslide victory in our nation's democracy. I thank the American people for their overwhelming vote to elect me as their next president of the United States. The official votes cast by the Electoral College exceeded the 270 required to secure the presidency by a very large margin, far greater than ever anticipated by the media. This election represents a movement that millions of hardworking men and women all across the country stood behind and made possible. With this historic step, we can look forward to the bright future ahead. Mercedes, what about all this?
All I can say is that I think my children will be able to see the Electoral College process in action, because normally it's just a ceremonial event, and this has become the most highly dramatic electoral college system that we've seen in our lifetime. So, you know, again, you've seen the protesters go out. Michael Moore wanted to pay Republican electors a fine, their fine, if they were to vote against Trump. But at the end of the day, we've seen the process work out. This is about voting in America's president, not California's president. This is why we don't have a popular vote system.
Right. A lot of popular votes that went to Hillary Clinton actually did come from California. If you look at the electoral votes, it's 306 to 232. But on the popular vote, if you look at the final popular vote, you can see the RCP average of the last polls. And there you see 46.8, 43.6. Those were the final polls before Election Day. And then the final actual results. And you see, Chuck, that plus or minus 3%, which is what most polls are, in the margin of error, pretty much got it there on the popular vote.
They did nationally, although certain states that were important don't seem to have followed the polls. On the other hand, what you just showed us is an interesting little statistical byproduct of an election that was not carried out on a national level, but was rather carried out on the level of 50 states plus the District of Columbia in a contest for these electors who cast their interesting ballots today. And yes, there were just a few of faithless ones.
We should point out a couple went from Hillary Clinton to Bernie Sanders.
I was just going to say that Bernie got a couple of votes. And what I think this shows, look, it's true that everything kind of went according to plan, but a little blip here and there in the faithless electors, that's pretty unusual in our history. I mean, it doesn't even go that roughly, ordinarily. And I think in their own small way, these little glitches in the electoral vote today, people trying not to cast them, then being a gentleman up in Minnesota, a Democratic elector, tried to vote for Bernie and was replaced by an alternate. They are in some way symptomatic of the real unrest in the country and the fact that for a lot of people this election is still something to relitigate.
Right, but for a lot of people, including the Clinton campaign, George, they still have not come to grips with any other reason why they have lost other than either Jim Comey's letter or Russian interference.
Yeah, well, and the president in his NPR interview said, well, it's a message problem, and I'm going to coach them so they'll do better in the future. Now, this is a man who's presided over the worst losses in his own party of any two-term president. Senators, governors, members of the House, 1,000 state legislative seats, and he says, well, now I'm going to share my magic with the rest of my party. I don't get it. He has been the most loquacious president in our history. Can any of the three of you think of a memorable sentence in the last 8 years?
Well,
try it. Okay,
while we're thinking about that, let me also just say that on this John Podesta point, and you know, there's a certain quantity of what they really think happened, that they really do blame Comey, and then there's a certain kind of convenient argument here, because inside Democratic circles, a lot of people are blaming John Podesta, a lot of people are blaming this campaign for mistakes that they made that were avoidable, that could have saved this, that if they'd avoided them would have saved the election. So of course, it's very much in John Podesta's interest to throw the blame off on things like Jim Comey and the Russians.
And I think for the Democratic autopsy, they're going to rewrite the Politics for Dummies book, because at the end what you're seeing is the fact that they did not do effectively the get out the vote in these battleground states like Michigan. They ignored the ground game intel, and I think that really cost them the election to a certain extent, where they ignored these battleground states and really did not listen to the people on the ground.
Thank you, panel. Next up, Monday's mean tweet.